There's a very thin line between genius and stupidity. I think we can all remember being 15 years old and a little bit bored, and maybe you have access to a computer, and you decide to hack into NASA? Not as an accident, not as a curious, let me see if this password works moment. No, as a challenge. For me, at 15, keeping a Tamagotchi alive was a challenge. Hacking NASA? Absolutely not. But for Jonathan Joseph James, that was totally doable. NASA shut everything down, the FBI got involved, and a teenager in Florida discovered very quickly that there's a difference between I'm gifted and
I'm going to jail!
Every secret got a shadow, every shadow got a cry. When the lies fall, lies all the lines, when the lights low, when the truth gon' rise.
Case in point, we catch it every time.
Welcome to Case in Point, the investigative storytelling show where I break down real-life stories of brilliance, chaos, and consequences. This is Season 1. I'm Asa-Mari Z, and we are looking at crimes of genius or stupidity, a collection of true stories that makes you question whether people are incredibly smart or perhaps maybe not. Today's episode, the kid who hacked NASA because he was bored. Now, let me just say, 15 years old, he was a child. A menace? Maybe. A prodigy? Definitely. A cautionary tale with a dial-up connection? Absolutely. Because nothing says fun summer vacation like casually interrupting the space program. Let's get into it.
Access granted.
The year is 1999, and we are in Pinecrest, Florida, a quiet suburb just outside Miami where nothing particularly exciting happens unless you count iguanas falling out of the trees. Jonathan Joseph James is a skinny, sharp, painfully intelligent teenager with a love for computers and a boredom problem so severe it probably needs a prescription. He starts teaching himself programming at 10 years old, not Hello World level programming. I mean, the kind of programming where you're reading about Unix kernels at midnight instead of sleeping like a normal kid. By 15, he was a self-taught penetration tester without the job title, a hobbyist cryptographer without the certification, and a professional problem for federal agents who did not know they were about to become his unwilling pen pals. His online alias was Comrade, spelled with a 0 instead of an O, which, for a kid born after the Cold War ended, kind of feels a little pretentious, but apparently Jonathan was very much committed to the bit. Jonathan didn't start with NASA. That would be too direct, too linear, a little too insane. He warmed up by breaking into local systems. Bell South, the Miami-Dade school systems, and then, because obviously, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. You know, the branch of the Department of Defense responsible for nuclear, chemical, and biological threat mitigation. Yeah, those guys. Did I mention Jonathan was 15? He was 15. So, according to reports, James installed a backdoor on a DTRA server in Dulles, Virginia, and then used a sniffer program to intercept more than 3,300 internal messages, including usernames and passwords from multiple Department of Defense employees. This wasn't like, oops, I clicked something weird on LimeWire. Like, no. This was a methodical intrusion executed with precision and patience. With those captured credentials, Jonathan shifted his attention upward, literally, to the stars. NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, is home to some of the most sophisticated scientific systems on Earth. But remember, this is 1999, so their cybersecurity wasn't exactly astronaut grade just yet. Jonathan used his DTRA captured data to slip quietly into NASA's network. No alarms, no dramatic countdown timers, no Mission Impossible lasers. He just installed a backdoor and logged in. And inside NASA's servers, he stumbled upon something extraordinary. A piece of proprietary software used to control the International Space Station's environmental control and life support system. So now, Jonathan has a hold of a proprietary program that regulates temperature, humidity, and air quality for astronauts orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles per hour. And Jonathan, probably sitting in his room drinking Sunny D, downloaded that software onto his home computer. The value? About $1.7 million. NASA discovered the breach and immediately pulled the plug. They shut down the affected systems for 21 full days to analyze the damage and rebuild their defenses. The remediation cost them roughly $41,000. Imagine being so good at hacking that NASA's best strategy is, let's just turn it off and hope he goes away.
Houston, we have a problem.
In 1999, Jonathan, who was 15 years old at the time and known online by the hacker handle Comrade, breached NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center and downloaded software used to control the International Space Station's environmental life support systems. According to reports, that software was valued at $1.7 million, and the intrusion forced NASA to shut down part of its systems for 21 days.
FBI, open up!
Imagine you're a 15-year-old boy being jolted awake at dawn by federal agents banging on your door. Agents rushed inside, computers seized, disks confiscated, your room turned inside out. Your parents are terrified. The neighbors, they're peeking through the blinds, and that one guy is vacuuming the lawn just to get closer to see what's going on. And Jonathan, he never intended for any of this to happen. As a matter of fact, he never intended to harm anyone at all. He wasn't trying to steal state secrets or sell the information. In later interviews, he said he did it because he wanted to test himself, to see if he could. And it turned out he could. That was the problem. On September 21, 2000, Jonathan pleaded guilty to 2 counts of juvenile delinquency, making him the first juvenile in American history to be federally convicted of a cybercrime. Jonathan's case was handled under juvenile law, so many of the documents remain sealed. But here's what we do know. His sentence included 7 months of house arrest, probation until the age of 18, a ban on recreational computer use, which is the ultimate punishment for a hacker, and he had to write mandatory apology letters to NASA and the DTRA. And while the letters themselves are not publicly available, federal summaries indicate that he had to explain what he did and why it was wrong. I cannot imagine a worse punishment for a 16-year-old than to have to write a court-mandated essay on why the thing you did, which technically didn't actually hurt anyone, was wrong. Jonathan James served his sentence. He completed house arrest. He finished probation. On paper, he paid his debt. But the thing about consequences is, they don't always end when the court says they do. Sometimes the aftermath is the real punishment. After the NASA hack, Jonathan tried to move on. He stayed out of trouble, he worked odd jobs, he spent time with his family, and he tried desperately to live the normal life his sentencing demanded from him. But the truth is, once the world decides who you are, it's almost impossible to convince them otherwise. And Jonathan absolutely expressed remorse. But the legal system, it didn't forget him. Jonathan was brilliant, curious, intensely gifted. But people didn't see brilliance. They saw danger. They didn't see a kid. They saw a threat. They didn't see a moment of impulsive curiosity. They saw a future criminal mastermind. And once that label attached itself, it never let go. Jonathan served his sentence, stayed out of trouble, and tried to rebuild his life. But in 2007, years after his juvenile case closed, the FBI raided his home again. This time, he was connected as a lead, not as a suspect, to the massive TJX retail breach case. TJX announced the breach on January 17, 2007, but the intrusion really began in July of 2005. The breach method? The hackers exploited a vulnerability in the weak wireless network security in one of the stores. They installed a sniffer program to capture customer transaction data. The breach compromised over 45 million credit and debit card numbers and, in a separate incident, personal information such as driver's license and social security numbers for about 400,000 customers. The breach affected customers who had shopped at TJX stores, including TJ Maxx, HomeGoods, Marshalls, and AJ Wright. Now, Jonathan was never officially accused, and it was never actually proven that he was involved. But the stress of being implicated and potentially going to prison for a crime he insisted he didn't commit broke him. He felt targeted, haunted by a mistake he made as a kid. For someone who never intended harm, that kind of pressure can feel like a slow suffocation. And this is where it becomes a tragedy, because on May 18, 2008, at the age of 24, Jonathan died by suicide. He left a note which included the line, "I have no faith in the justice system. Either way, I have lost control over the situation, and this is my only way to regain control." A gifted, isolated kid made a bad decision. The system made an example of him, and he never recovered. So, what do we learn? We learn that brilliance without boundaries is dangerous, not because it seeks harm, but because it doesn't understand the cost. We learn that gifted children don't stop being children just because adults are impressed or threatened by their intelligence. We learn that institutions are excellent at punishing, but often terrible at rehabilitating. And sometimes, the thing that destroys someone isn't the crime they committed, but the weight of never being truly forgiven for it. Because there's a very specific grief that comes with knowing yourself deeply while living in a world determined to misunderstand you. It's the grief of watching the truth of who you are shrink behind the shadow of how people perceive you. It's the grief of constantly defending your intentions while others defend their assumptions. It's the grief of being treated like a problem instead of like a person. That feeling of being trapped inside of someone else's story about you is unbearably heavy, especially for a young adult who had already survived the spotlight of prosecution as a child. Jonathan wasn't a villain. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't even a cyber terrorist. He was a kid who got curious. A kid who didn't understand the scale of his own abilities. A kid who made a mistake that spiraled into a lifelong burden. He never got the chance to grow up and become who he really was. And that's the part of the story we can't ignore. Brilliance without guidance can get you into trouble, but brilliance without compassion, that's what destroys people. And we, society, institutions, systems, we failed Jonathan in that regard. Because sometimes the worst thing you can do to a gifted, sensitive, deeply introspective child is cast them as the villain in a story that they never even auditioned for.
He's out of line, but he's right.
On the next episode of Case in Point, we're jetting off to Paris to meet the woman who sold the Eiffel Tower twice. Oh yeah, because crime may not pay, but it definitely has a personality. And in her case, it's giving luxury scammer girl.
I don't chase villains, they come tripping on facts. Every season, new schemes, whole world full of acts. If it's dirty, I'll find it, keep receipts in my jeans. From courtroom lies to influencers on screens. Like Virgil and Dante sightseeing in hell. If the case got a twist, I got a story to tell. I'm the calm in the chaos when the truth gets loud. Pull a mask off a monster right in front of the crowd. Every secret got a shadow. Every shadow got a cry. When the lies fall lies, all the lines on the lights low. When the truth gon' rise. Case in point, we catch it every time.